Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And for those of you who have listened, you know the drill. You know what I'm going to say up top. And for those of you who might be new, I always like to share before I introduce my guest how they came to be on the podcast, how I got to know them, because as I always say, I think it's really important that we're open to meeting people. And I know everyone's at different places in life. Some people are not as comfortable going out, although I always like to encourage people to push a little bit past. Like, don't let fear or different things that ruminate in your head maybe hold you back. Because I always joke, I don't know if I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. And I recently heard multivert and ambivert. So I was a kid in school who wouldn't say a thing, but now I'm out there doing stand up comedy. I own a business and I'm out there. So you can go with a friend if you want to go to like a cool event that you don't want to go by yourself, or a networking business mixer, whatever it is, get out there because you're going to meet people and you might meet them and just go, yeah, okay, they're nice or they're cool. You don't maybe know right away where they quote unquote fit in your life, but chances are maybe down the road they're going to introduce you to someone or vice versa. You're going to be able to help them. They can help you. You can create something together. And I'm just all about that. So for this week, my guest, Collie Turner, is someone I'm just meeting today virtually. And I was introduced to her through someone I had just met a couple of weeks ago virtually, Ellen Schimberg from Disability Pride, PA. I might be doing some work with them this summer, doing some laughter yoga. I was fortunate to get connected with them through my friend Gab Bonesso. And you've heard of Gab because she's been on here like a handful of times. She's come to Scranton. She's the comedian, bipolar disorder. She's openly spoken about that and how humor helps. She's a mental health advocate. She got me connected with Vicky at Disability Pride, who has also been a guest on the podcast last year. And it's just such a lovely community that we can build helping one another. So without further ado, I am super excited to dive in. And I know you guys are probably like, yeah, she says that every week. I can't help it. These are fabulous women that are doing incredible things that I love. And I know that you're going to want to hear about it. So welcome, Collie Turner.
Hello. Hi, Janine. How are you?
I'm
So good to
doing
be here.
well. I'm so excited. I love what you're doing. And I should have said at the top. So Collie Turner has something today. We're going to talk obviously to Collie because I want to get to know the woman Collie, but tell us about the day you were born, Collie. Now, I don't know if you'll remember for that far back, but Collie has heroic gardens, and we're going to get into that because it's like, garden therapy, nature therapy, forest therapy. I am all about that because I will tell you that is no joke. If you're someone that hasn't tried it, there is nothing like walking in the forest. I mean, I'm telling you, that heals me every time. But let's not jump ahead. I want to learn a little bit about who you are, Collie. So if you'll share just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm from Philadelphia, but I want to tell you that I moved 8 times before I was 8. So if you've ever seen the movie Mermaids with Cher, I was Christina Ricci. Um, we moved around quite a bit, and I actually often think about the fact that probably moving so much enabled me to talk to people because I had to start over every year, right? So new friends, new teachers, new environment, you got to start over. So um, yeah, I ended up back in Philadelphia with my family, and went to Temple University, and ended up living in New York for a little while, coming back to Philadelphia. Had a career in advertising and marketing, primarily digital in the pharmaceutical space,
Wow.
um, for about 25 plus years, and it was during that time that I did all the things, did all the waspy white girl things, got married, um, bought a house, left the city, bought a house in the suburbs with a lawn, and really got into the gardening scene that I had grown up with, through my grandparents. They were organic gardeners. My mother was an organic gardener, and an interior designer. And once I had my own garden, I was like, holy cow. I've had all this trauma in my life and it's coming out in this garden and I feel safe. And it took 20 years for me to work on this acre of property. Um, and then I took a step back and I realized I was building all of these little like hiding spots of flowers, right? Oh, you can hide
Mhm.
back there. You can hide back there. What am I doing? I'm like, I'm hiding in my garden. So anyway, I started Heroic Gardens in 2018. I lost my job in 2017. And I thought I had been sitting on this idea of, and it was a very simple idea. It was, we've got men and women that are serving our country coming back. Sometimes they're coming back to homelessness. And so if they are lucky enough to find a home, um, they are worried about feeding their children, or they are worried about keeping the lights on. They're not worried about the front of their yard, and they're worried about their own mental, physical health. So my idea was, well, gosh, I like gardening so much and I'd really like to help the veteran community. Maybe I could get connected with them and I can do their landscaping. So very like simple, naive idea. Um, and what it's mushroomed into, today in it's 2024, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, is, the way we talk about it is we are a mental health organization for veterans and their families that uses horticulture and ready, here's a mouthful, social therapeutic horticulture as an alternative healing outlet for that community. So I guess for me, what's really important is, I did the career piece and it was great and wonderful. And but I'm so immersed in this now that I can't see ever going back to something like that. And it really has pushed me to just jump off the ledge, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I'm still working full time, by the way.
Oh, wow.
That so 2 jobs for 6 years, and I'm tackling breast cancer.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and then, the other things that you and I were chatting about.
Wow.
So I don't know. I feel like, yes, it's a lot, but it's not any more than any of us can handle because we're women, first of all. And it's exciting. Like, get up every day. I just said to a group of veterans, I read something about, you know, we're life at all around us is an art gallery,
Mm.
and we're so busy looking at the carpet floor.
Mm. Wow.
So that was a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna
How'd I
say,
do?
okay, where do I even want to? Okay, I had all these, I had a couple questions pop in my head, and then I'm like, okay, maybe not that question now, maybe not that question now, maybe not that. Okay, so much there. Well, first of all, I want to say, and I want to say you're brave, but you probably don't want to hear that. But I think it's amazing. You're strong. How about that? Like, and I think a lot of women pretty much rise to the occasion all the time. But that's a lot. So I don't know, honestly. Hats off to you that you're doing all of that. But I kind of think sometimes there are days that like I'm in perimenopause and I get a lot of lows anymore that I'm probably not handling that well. So exercise does help, but the days I don't get it, I sit in that lowness and it's not a good feeling. So, but I
Yeah.
think back to years ago when my one friend was like, wow, how do you do all these when I was doing a lot? I still do, but some days it's harder than others. And I say, what's in motion stays in motion, and I do feel that way. Sometimes we're able to do more when we're doing more, if that makes sense, right? Like if it's harder to get started when you're not doing something, but you have so much going on. It's just like you just got to keep moving. You got to keep juggling.
Listen, I have the same days as you, and you know what? It has really helped sort of starting to get to know other women that are battling breast cancer because, yeah, just when I felt like I got all the plates in the air and I'm managing them all, I get this diagnosis, right? And all of a sudden I'm all alone. And all of a sudden I'm on my couch and I can't move and I'm a CrossFit cycling person and I'm not doing any of that. And I'm just sinking and sinking and sinking. And I'm with you 100%. Like I love this and what you do because, I think it is really critical. It's not just words. Like everybody, we are like, as women, we need to be out there for one another. And I love what you said at the top, which was just put yourself out there. And I want to say, like, when I started this organization, and by the way, I thought about it for 5 to 10 years and I did nothing. I did nothing. And you know why? Because I was afraid. I was afraid that I was going to get in trouble. Let's start with that. I was going to get in trouble. Like, who am I? What, the principal? Like, who am I going to get in trouble with? Right. And then I was like, what happens if it works? Oh no. Like, huh,
Even
if it
worse,
works,
success, right?
that's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
And then what happens if it changes me? Well, that's what it did. Um, that's why I live in an apartment in North Philadelphia and not in that big house that I mentioned. Um, that's why I've lost a lot of friends. That's why I am in the middle of a divorce. Um, because I chose service. I chose, you know, the most important thing in this life is to help somebody else. I mean, we all got our stuff. We all got our stuff. And chances are there's a lot of people that have it worse. There's a lot of people that have it better, but it's not, and this isn't about like, sort of like shrugging off what's going on with me inside. But it is about when you help someone and you serve someone else, man, don't you feel better? So
Yes.
if we can serve other people and the way we're doing it is by helping them learn not only how to care for a plant, so there's a responsibility factor, maybe to learn how to grow their own food. There's a sustainability factor. We're helping, people that have been suffering from what we all know as the invisible wounds of war, right? I walk out of the hospital, but I'm a mess up in my brain. But I look good enough to the doctor, so I'm good. Well, that there's a lot of that, and you don't even necessarily have to be a veteran for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do with plants is we really look at how do we help you increase your confidence and your self-esteem and your mood and your symptoms of depression and how do we help you with your bone strength? Like you start thinking about like the physical manifestations of working with plants and all the positive. There's a lot of that. So yeah, I had to do this. And when I did do it, it felt good. And even now, like every day, 6 years in, to your earlier point, like I'm so grateful that I did it. I'm so grateful of the people I've met on the journey. And I'm so glad that even now, 6 years in, when we have a reputation, I still say yes to everything, right? Because you just don't know who's supposed to be on this journey with you.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Or who you're supposed to help.
So true. Yeah. So I want to say one thing, you mentioned about feeling good helping people, and there is research on this, and I'm sure you know this as well. I had taken online Dr. Lori Santos at Yale. Her Science of Wellbeing course is incredibly popular. She has the Happiness Lab podcast. And she talks about, she's not the first, obviously, but she has talked full episodes about that whole sense of doing for others and the research that doing and giving to others, what it does for us. And it's like, it's no joke. It's not just a warm fuzzy. It actually is healthy for us. So that helps us to heal. I mean, that is no joke. But I want to tell just so listeners, because we kind of jumped right in. So
Sorry.
Heroic Gardens is no, that's no, I do not apologize, ma'am. No, I want the people to understand, especially who maybe aren't in Philadelphia, who aren't familiar. Heroic Gardens is in Philadelphia, and just give us the little bit of the mission, because like I said, I scrolled through the website. I just read snippets here, and I was loving what I was reading because many of us know the benefits. We read about gardening is very healing. I will tell you, I love forest therapy, and I love getting out there walking, running, kayaking, all that. I just started getting excited about gardening a couple of years ago. I have a hell of a lot to learn. Let me tell you, that's not only healing, but that's hard work too.
Yeah,
So,
but the hard work is part of it, right? It's the exercise you were talking about
so
that you're moving your body.
tell us about the whole mission and what you do. I just want everyone to understand the capacity of all the great things you're doing.
You got it. So at our core, our mission is just to connect veterans with the healing power of plants and nature, right? There's a lot to unpack there. And as you and I were talking about, this really is a mental health organization. There are many different alternative healing therapies out there for everyone. There's art therapy and music therapy and equine therapy. And my God, plant therapy is like one of the oldest things around. We're not inventing anything new. And if you've ever read the book, I would suggest you may want to, if you are a plant person, The Secret Life of Plants, you will cry. You will cry historically at just sort of like who the advocates for plants were, how far back it goes in our history, and how important plants are in our lives, right? What we eat, what we wear, what we live in. I mean, they're all around us. So again, not new, but it's harnessing that in a way that will help veterans. Not everything has to be treated with a pill. So we actually follow a whole health model, which was designed by the VA. They have a Veterans Empowerment Center. There are like 8 core tenets of this whole health model. So it could be like movement, relationships, spirituality, nutrition. And what we do is we align those tenets with an activity that is plant or plant-based. And I say that because, as you mentioned, we're primarily in Philadelphia and the Delaware Valley. So that's like zone 7. I think it may have changed to 6A. I don't know. But, we have seasonality on our side here. So how do we operate 365? That's why we do some plant-based activities, because we will still use elements like we'll be working on making malas soon, because it's February. We're not necessarily ready to start our seeds or some of our other live plant activities, but we do want to bring it back to, somebody's inner core. And so malas are a great way to be able to, use natural materials and set an intention.
Now, can I ask what that is? Because I'm ignorant to that. What is
Oh yeah,
mala?
a mala is actually it's Hindu, I believe, and it really is sort of like it's like a prayer bead bracelet.
Oh,
And usually it's a necklace, and it has 108 beads on it. And each one of those beads, almost like a rosary. And
hmm.
I believe, I'm not Catholic, but
I
sort of
am, and I
like
can
how
tell you that similar.
okay,
Yeah.
then okay. So let's hindify that, right? And what we're doing is we're making bracelets, which still keep the numbers intact, but 18 different beads. And there are a number of the beads might be related to a chakra. And when you are creating this, you are setting an intention, and the intention can be anything related to what you want it to be, right? Your own heart, relationship, your health. That it's about you. And I think, for us, especially with these projects that we work on with the veteran community, I do want to say it is about them. It's about listening, right? They all have a story, and they can't be forgotten. These are the people that served our country, and the whole reason you and I can have this conversation today, right? It's about helping them remember that they matter, because they come back and they are just, a lot of the veterans I work with are filled with shame. Shame because they had to take orders and do things that they probably wouldn't have done if they were a civilian.
Hmm.
So how do we help them, and how do we, help them heal and protect them, and essentially like put them through these programs and then help them move ahead in their lives. I mean, yes, we are in the Delaware Valley area right now, but we definitely have a 3 to 5 year vision to be in other cities across the country that have high concentration of veteran populations, because this is a great opportunity. And one way we're testing it out actually right now is we have a virtual program. We have about 20 veterans in it, and they range from Hawaii right here to Philly. We have one in Florida, a couple in Texas. So it's really fun because once a month they get a box that arrives to their doorstep, and then they unpack that virtually, like you and I are doing. And, they work with a horticultural therapist. And it's a great social time to be together. They have a common thread, and we're providing them with another common thread no matter where they are in the United States. So we're working towards, if you ask me today, I don't know how we're going to get there yet. Strategic plan, sure, I'm on it. Uh, but we're getting there. I have 100% faith that it's something that's going to happen.
I love that virtual that you can reach people anywhere. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. I was going to ask you if you had plans to grow because obviously there's veterans all over the country who need this. You mentioned the horticulturist. Now, do you have partnerships, collaborations with like area colleges, universities, or professionals in the field, or do you do all this work yourself?
So we do have partnerships. But I have to tell you, like right after I started this, like year one, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And, yes. And to your listeners, I'm giving the old college try swoop. Yes, I'm going to make it happen. I didn't know what I was doing. And the other part of this is that in year one, no matter how much I put up like marketing materials or online presence or whatever, no one called me. No one in the veteran community called me because I'm not a veteran. They don't. And so what I realized was, okay, this is the population I want to serve. I like to garden. I have no formal training. I think there's some science behind it that makes you feel better because I feel better. I better go back to school. So I did. I went back to school for my certificate in horticultural therapy at Temple University. And it was there that I actually got introduced to the American Horticultural Therapy Association. Of course,
Hmm.
there is one, and the Mid-Atlantic Horticultural Therapy Network. And through there, actually, I've been able to, you know, talk with folks that like share ideas. Our virtual hort therapist came from the Mid-Atlantic group. So they're a great resource. And our like boots on the ground local hort therapist was my professor.
Hmm.
And, she was about to retire. And I was like, yeah, not so much. I need you. Let's go. Let's do this. And I think, for me, with that is she became my proof point, right? Here I was like, I'm a baby in this. She's like I always introduce her as like the godmother of hort therapy because she's been doing it for so long, like in every nursing home in, Montgomery County and in Philadelphia. And she's built like all I mean, you got to meet her. All of our veterans call her Sergeant Salty because she's got a little bit of a sass. But yeah, she literally always jokes that she was about to retire. And I was like, hold the phone. I need you right now. And it's worked out really well because I'm definitely like the business operations marketing side. So perception is everything. And she's the one that shows up with the spirituality. She's an arborist, she's a landscape designer, she knows plants. Like, and she'll tell you that's the only thing she knows. And that's not true, but that's what she likes to believe about herself. And that's fine because that's how it works. So yeah, I mean, I have to say that we're an organization that, we're a GSD organization, right? One, there's a lot of women in it. So we do get poop done. I didn't want to say the word GSD. But I think what I've found is that a lot of organizations that are already in existence that we probably should be partnering with are very layered,
Hmm.
and it becomes difficult to actually navigate. And I want to keep going. I don't want to be mired in something. So am I making it harder for us? Quite possibly. Is it taking longer? Quite possibly. But is it a beautiful journey? Are we creating an impact and leaving, setting up the framework for a legacy? Yes. That's way more important right now.
Let me ask you, I want to go back to because we talked about this briefly before I hit the record button. You said yourself you're not a veteran, and that made a little bit challenging. I want to ask you just talk a little bit about that because I do understand that sometimes communities are kind of like, well, you're not part of our community, so maybe there were, there's barriers obviously to getting buy-in or participation.
Mhm.
So share a little bit about that, and then you said your father and your grandfather are veterans. So
Yes.
why would that was so important to you to serve this community?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd love to start with my family first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I know that everybody can't see this, but I always carry, this is my grandfather's war
Oh,
ID,
wow.
which apparently they don't make these anymore. I carry this with me on jobs because early on I learned people are like, you're not a veteran. Why are you doing this? And then I show them my grandfather's war card from 1945, and they're like, who is that? I'm like, it's my grandfather. So my grandfather, when he was a medic in World War II, and he came back. He lived came back to his family in Summers Point, New Jersey. So down at the Jersey Shore, and they had a huge garden behind the house. And I look back at that, and I realized that man was going there to heal. Like he was growing, all kinds of things to feed the family, but he was in that thing all the time, growing whatever. And it was like an inherent piece of my childhood that I adored. And when I started to really dig into the science of horticulture and horticultural therapy and the impact, I realized, oh my God, this man, who knows what he saw? He had to find a way to deal with it. So that's why, like, and my father, he's a character because he served in the Navy. He wanted to be a pilot. He didn't get to be a pilot, but he worked on like some sort of nitrogen thing and ejector seats and blah, blah, blah. And he never got called up. So, and he always says, well, I'm not as much of a veteran as your grandfather. And I say, no, man, you are. Like the minute you went to boot camp, you stopped being a civilian. You made that choice. And that is, I think, fundamentally what we all forget. We want veteran, we're like, oh, veterans, welcome home. Come on back. We love you. We love you. And then the fanfare leaves and these people are left facing addiction, facing isolation, facing homelessness, facing suicide. And who's there to hold them up? And with women, I studied the female population of female veterans. 1 in 3 is experiences military sexual trauma while they're serving. Um, how do you ask them to come home and go to the VA? How do you ask them to go to a hospital that's connected to the branch of service where they were violated?
Mm.
So, I guess at the core, when you ask what we do, right? And we're like, oh yeah, we play with plants. We've got orchids. We've got this. We've got that. We have plant swaps. We do forest bathing. Sure, we do all of that. But at the end of the day, it is about listening, supporting, and embracing this population. And frankly, every population has this need, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, anybody listening out there that has an idea about supporting a population, like, go for it. Call me. I'll tell you what I did. Like, I'm an open book with this stuff because the rising tide raises all ships. I know I sound like, a trite thing right now, but it's so true. And it goes back to what you were saying, Janine, like we have to help each other. It's the only way we're going to create any, especially right now, any way we're going to create any impactful change in the world. We have to do it ourselves.
Yes.
So you asked me, okay, that was the family part. You asked me about the veteran population. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. And I want to tell you, I think the motto that we have now was the motto I started with. And this is just an inherent part of my fiber. I will always do what I say I'm going to do. I hang my hat on it. I'm not wearing a hat, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I gotcha.
Um, and in that, you know, that first project that we got, I made a phone call on the news. I saw a women's housing shelter for female veterans that were homeless had been renovated in West Philadelphia, and it was beautiful, but the landscaping was awful. And I called up the executive director, who was not a veteran, but she was a very strong woman, and I said, could we offer this service? This is what we do, right? I stopped talking about myself as aspirational, and I started talking about our organization as in the present. And she gave us that job. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I learned a lot, and I learned how to drive a backhoe. And there was a lot of, sure, I have insurance to operate heavy machinery and things that, you know, every day there was a challenge, but they were my challenges to explore. We had no volunteers, right? When I would go to a conference, all I had was my laptop and imagine this, we're gonna grow tomatoes. You know, there's no pictures, there's no swag, there's just literally my Mac and me. Um, so yeah, I mean, that first project took us 4 months. I signed on like, oh yeah, we're going to clean up 2 flower beds. They're 12 by 9, should be really easy. 25 years of bamboo growing there. That's why you need a backhoe. Did you know that there's something called a bamboo shield? It's a giant piece of plastic that you dig and you put down in the ground so the bamboo can't get by. This was my life. And I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? The best part about that whole project is we found out after we finished that they didn't even own the property. So,
Oh
dun,
boy.
dun, 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 dun. But I mean, that, you know, that's it, right? And that is when we started the application form, right? Where's your property line? Let's These are the things you learn, though. You have to make these mistakes. And at the time we were doing what we were doing something called yard transformations, right? So people call me all the time. They're like, are you a landscaper? I'm like, not really. Yard transformations for us are if a veteran calls us or someone from a veteran's family and says, hey, I'd love for you to come out and look at my property. I send them the application. Then we do almost like a social visit to see what's going on in the household and see if they're serious. Honestly, between you and me and all of us listening, we never turn anyone away. We always say that, you know, we do list out, you need to be 250% or higher the federal poverty guideline, but we don't turn people away. We are there to heal the land. We are not there to heal the person. But in doing that and healing the land, the person learns how to heal themselves. So we go into these neighborhoods and we help people reclaim their pride in their property, learn something about, you know, gardening. And as a result, their neighbors are like, what's going on over there? And we also put, you know, those annoying signs that you know, any business puts up, right? It's like, I just installed gutters, so I'm going to put this on front of your
Yes.
lawn. Well, we have one, but ours is a veteran lives here. So it's that awareness of, hey, you guys, like, treat this person with some additional respect, check in on them. They're really important. And I think the other really awesome thing is that once we start to do this, we see a lot of our veterans come back to us. So they're part of our family. Sometimes they adopt board members. Sometimes they show up at other volunteer events. Sometimes they decide they're just going to make reoccurring donations every month. And that's what they do for us. Guess what they do for themselves? One of our veterans cut her hair. Like she went and got a haircut. And then she lost 15 pounds. That's awesome stuff. Like, I don't care if I don't have, you know, quantitative metrics yet, and I will. To me, that's about people. That's about people's lives. And that's why we're in this.
Yeah.
So our gang, which is a very hilarious, if anybody's in the Philadelphia, Delaware Valley area and you want to come out with us, we are a hilarious, funny, unusual bunch of all religions, all races, all creeds, all political views, civilians, veterans, family members. I mean, we are a weirdo bunch. Like you see us on the street, you're like, how are they all friends? This is our common thread. We are going to do what we said we're going to do.
I love it. We need more of that though, because it's like, as you're saying that, it's like, and yet throughout the world, it's like, everyone puts up that barrier when it's like, wait, how do you vote? That nonsense. So I
Exactly.
love seeing people coming together that, like you said, you have the one common thread, and yet you manage to get things done and probably be civil to one another too, right?
Oh, we have a great time. I mean, I always get nervous now when we have new people because I'm all about also, I mean, anybody that comes out, everybody matters, right? I've had people say, "Oh, I don't have a green thumb. I don't know how to garden." This, that, and the other thing. I'm like, first of all, that's a myth. Like everyone has a green thumb. That's silly. If I have one takeaway I learned in hort therapy school from Sergeant Salty, it was green side up. Just make sure the green side is up and you are a horticulturist. That's what she always says. So, you can do this, but our projects are designed for anybody to come. I don't care if you're in a wheelchair. I don't care if you have a walker. I don't care if you have a broken leg. There's a job for you. It is about the social interaction of service.
Yeah. And that is so important, honestly. I'm sure. What is the best part for you? I mean, it sounds like you are so passionate and joyful. I know the business side of things and some of the layers, as you mentioned before, that stuff is not so fun. But I'm sure when you see a project being done and you have that camaraderie, that's got to feel amazing.
It does. And actually, I started to touch on this, like the user experience in general. I want when people join us, I want them to come back. So last year, for example, we had over 280 volunteers. Um, and they're not uniques. Like we got a lot of repeat offenders, right? And I'm proud about that because when we get some new folks in, even the private jokes, they're somehow all of a sudden rolled into. And we do this in a way that, there are team leads and then there are teams. And if a mother and daughter come together, chances are they're not going to end up on the same team. And there's just no time to be nervous, to be self-conscious. It's like, okay, team, you're doing this and you're doing this, and everybody goes to work. And the best part for me is literally walking around and hearing the chatter, right? People that don't know each other have a common goal and they're like, where do you live? Oh, what do you do? Like, there's no judgment. There's no judgment at all. We've had people meet and like start dating, right? We've had people find new jobs. The way I look at it is everybody's heart chakra is open. So they're just like, they're flowing. They're their true selves. And they leave and they're like, wow, that felt great. I'm going to go back again. Which is, of course, what I want.
Well, it sounds like you're making it happen. That's amazing. That's awesome. I want to shift, if you don't mind. We talked before I hit the record button about like how healing this is for veterans and how they, of course, need the healing, but many of us in every community need it, but for yourself as well. I know you said that it has helped you because of some of your own things that you've had to work through. So I'd love to know that. And even with your diagnosis that you shared, do you feel it extra now for yourself? And like you said, even the volunteers who come, they're not veterans, but it can help. Plant therapy and horticulture therapy can help anyone. So how is the experience for you personally? Because you have your own stuff to deal with.
Yeah. Well, I think the hardest thing has been not having my garden. I think about getting the diagnosis and what I would have done if I still had my garden. Um, I would have been there all the time. But I do have two ginormous windowsills and everything's filled with plants. So one thing I keep saying to myself, what am I learning? What am I learning through this breast cancer nonsense? Like, what is it? And what I'm learning is this. I'm now a population and I'm observing being a patient and being in a group, and I'm observing how I'm being treated by healthcare professionals, by nonprofit organizations. And I'm observing myself. How am I showing up? Am I showing up? And I think what it's done for me has given me even more empathy towards, you know, not only the veterans, but our volunteers and our board and maybe people in general. This virtual program, for example, one of our volunteers called me and said, these are the people that aren't coming. They haven't been here in 2 months. And I said, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You got to show up. We got to be consistent. That person needs to be able to go to bed at night and say, I might show up, I might not. And that's how I am now. And I'm not a person that, I just got finished with my little soapbox saying I do what I say I'm going to do. I do that. But when it comes to my own health and my own self, I don't. I abandon it. It's like the first thing to go. Typical woman.
Yep. 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 Why do we do that?
Why do we do that? Yeah. So this has been really hard, and I still have a long road to go with this. And I haven't necessarily done what I'm supposed to do. In fact, I probably do quite the opposite. But it's part of this. Like, what the diagnosis has done has made me realize that this is the job that I was born to have, and I need to leave my other job. That's what it's done. And I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it this year. Mark my words. I can't wait to come back and be like, I did it.
Wow.
Because you know what? Life is short.
Yes.
Anything can happen to any of us at any moment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've done it. I really don't want anybody out there to be afraid, because we just don't know what's around the corner. And I know that I sound like some crazy old ant in the corner, but you don't know. And if something is bringing you so much joy and making your heart sing, the money will follow. I mean, there's a lot of strategy in that, and, and tenacity. And yeah, I don't sleep. Like, I was thinking about you as I woke up at 2:00 this morning, and I was like, oh, I should be raring to go when I talk to Janine, because, it'll be like, I'll be on third dinner.
Third dinner. Oh my gosh. I love what you just said. First of all, nobody puts crazy ant in the corner. We're not doing that. But it's so true though about how, I mean, we're not you're right. It can sound kind of cliche and hallmarky about that, but I mean, I think a lot of people realized with the pandemic in the past 2 years too, that made people think differently and change, like realize, okay, this isn't the job I want anymore. This isn't the whatever I want anymore, because it made you think and take stock in things and reflect. And it is hard though. I will say, like, for me, I left a day job at Blue Cross, which is now Highmark, in 2010. And I've never looked back. But the thing is, and people will be like, oh, that was brave of you or whatever. There were certain things like I don't have children. So, and I'm single. So I didn't have to worry. I had myself to worry about. And I have two parents who are right next door who helped me. So I'm fortunate and I don't dismiss any of that or discount that. So it can be hard when you tell people, chase your dreams or go after them because it's that life is short and you should be happy. But at the same time, sometimes it's hard to do the real stuff, right? Like, okay, well, how am I going to pay my bills and how will I get, that health coverage I need? So it's tough, but I mean, to your point, life is too short to be miserable. And imagine how toxic that is to be doing a job you hate every day, what that's doing to your mindset and your cells or whatever. I mean, it is more important to be in something that's joyful.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. So I also do not have children. I went through IVF and I miscarried triplets. And it was an extremely devastating thing for me. But I look back
Mm.
now and I think, okay, I've got plant children, and I've got my bunny right here. His name is Hugo Starfish 3000. He's sitting here listening. He loves
That's a
your
lot
voice,
to put
by the
on a
way.
birth certificate.
And I've got an amazing family, and I've got everything I need. I guess that's what I'm saying. But you bring up a really good point. And so what are some of the ways, right, that you could start to move in that direction? And what I did was I left my corporate job and I reduced my financial footprint. So I left the SVP, VP titles and took a manager job that didn't require as much energy from me, but and it also reduced the money I was bringing home. But it started to prepare me. And by the way, I did it in a totally different career, because I'm that insane. Uh, and I had to learn like all over again. Like it was like I was right out of college. I went into construction. Please don't ask. But I guess my point is like when you're ready to do something, now you're already accustomed to a specific lifestyle because you've changed it so dramatically. And listen, I don't know what's ahead. Like I don't know. Do I have some savings? Yes. Would I like to dip into that? Absolutely not. Do I feel that this is worth it? 100 million%. And that, it's that Ted Lassoism, right? That believability, that, what we're doing at this moment, um, is going to thrive. And to be able to do that, you need to have somebody that has headspace for it. I mean, even now, one of our board members said, well, maybe you get a part-time job. And I was like, well, maybe, but like that's the last resort because there are too many important components to this and too much work and too many people to meet and too many veterans to meet, frankly, to not be doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, in your case, you are, it's really interesting that you really are growing, literally. I mean, and there's something so like the hard work, the healing, but then to see something grow is really, I'll tell you that, like I mentioned, I'm just getting into gardening and I have to say it is hard and there's so much I don't know. And I need to like look up online and learn more things. And I'm not great at it. And the soil by my house is very rocky and it's very like, there was like a wetlands years ago. So it's kind of messy. So not everything grows well, but I get super excited about the stuff that does. Like this is the second year I've planted or third year bulbs back in the fall, and I can't tell you the hope of looking forward to those daffodils or those spring crocuses. It's like crocuses. I don't know if it's croci, crocuses, whatever. But it's just such a hopeful thing that in of itself is joyful and hopeful.
It is. So I would like you to think that maybe you know some people that can help you with the plant stuff now. Just
Yes.
just throwing that out there. Listen, you're a pro already because you didn't call the soil dirt. You called it soil. So kudos to
Oh.
you. You are an expert. And also I hear you about this rocky stuff. It's like, isn't it like we live in Ireland, like on a farm
Yeah.
where in Ireland, it's like that backhoe, I ruined it because we hit whatever it is, like down here, it's like Wissahick and schist or something like that. And yeah, my grandmother used to garden in my old backyard with an asparagus knife because we never knew what we were going to hit. And, you can't, once you try and hit that stuff with a shovel, you're going to ask for it on your back.
Yeah. Okay, now
I
I have to
love that you're
ask.
doing that, and you need to tell me what you need and what you're thinking about, and look, we'll put you through the process of what we do with veterans. You can say, "Oh, I have this little area. What should I do with it?" And we'll make you a design, and then you can go out and just implement and enjoy.
I love that. Thank you so much. I was going to say I have to ask what's an asparagus knife. First of all, I wanted to go back. What's
Oh
that
man,
mean?
you know what? I'll mail you one.
I don't know what that is, an asparagus knife.
It's probably not even called that, but that's what my grandmother called it. So I'm like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of asparagus knives for everybody.
I get it. I get it. My grandmother lived with us until she passed at 87. So she had what we call pishrogues. She's Irish, and she had some of the wackiest, funniest, best sayings ever. Loved it. Loved it. That's awesome. Well, I will say it's very exciting. I look on Pinterest and I'm like, oh, I want this, I want that. And the one thing I will say that I would love to do, and part of me is too lazy to do it, but I think the idea of the gardening, like growing herbs, tomato, like one year we did tomatoes and peppers, and the tomatoes, it was great. It was the first time I ever made fried green tomatoes. They
Awesome.
came out pretty damn well, but I only did that the one year. We were kind of too lazy to continue it. I do want to get back to that because I think it is important growing our own food source. I think that is key if we can do that.
Yeah. And I mean, for us, with a lot of our classes, so the other part of our programming is this class, which we call Mission Windowsill, which we actually started during COVID. So we started it virtually and now it's live and virtual. And we have about 25 to 30 classes a month throughout the Delaware Valley. And again, based on seasonality, each class might have 10 to 15 veterans or caregivers in there. And coming up, because of where we are, we're going to start, one program will be called Pizza Garden. So what can we grow that would go on a pizza, right? So you just mentioned it, right? Your tomatoes, your basil, your oregano, whatever it is that we want. We can't grow chickens and pizza sauce and all that stuff, and cheese, of course. Wouldn't that be amazing if we could grow cheese?
I would love a cheese plant. If you ever
Thank
find
you.
one, let me know.
Great. Let me go to my lab. I'll be right back. But what we can do with veterans, once we have them growing these things at their homes, is we can partner with a grocery store to give them a voucher to buy the other pieces, the pizza crust, the cheese. And now all of a sudden they're feeding their family with, elements of things that they themselves grew. Wow. To your point, how satisfying is that? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Janine, I don't know if you have one yet, but I highly suggest you get a grow light and you start your seeds. Start your seeds now. It's time.
My friend's daughters have grow lights, and I don't think they grow now. She has a garden in her
Yeah.
backyard, but the girls grow like for their plants.
Mm-hmm.
And I've threatened myself to get one because my windowsills are not great. The one in the kitchen, it doesn't get a lot of light. And then of course in the they're not the best windows. So in the winter it's cold. That can hurt a little bit. And in the summer it gets kind of a little too humid. But I have this one plant that just won't die from an ex-boyfriend. It's 20 some years old and it won't die. It's this Irish thing. I forget. It reminds me of clovers, but I forget what it's called. But it's alive. But a lot of the other poor plants have died. Succulents, I overwater them. But I was going to say, I would love to get a grow light because I know without having enough real light that would help. So that
Yeah.
is something that I kind of would like to check out.
You don't overwater, you overlove.
Over love. Okay. I've smothered them to death.
Oh, me too. I'm the smothering queen of Brewery Town. I know. I listen, people, and you just brought up something really awesome, and that is that plants, like, they forgive, they don't judge, and they're like, yeah, c'est la vie, man. Like, we had a good run, but They're living things, right? They have a shelf life just like we do. Think about it's like trees. The whole point of a tree being tall is its vascular system. When do we think about a tree having a vascular? We think of each other having them, right? But like, and when a tree is dying, it's telling the other trees. And that's again, like you got to read The Secret Life of Plants because it's just like there's like FBI experiments where they're like, you know, yelling at one plant and playing like, you know, orchestra music for the other plant. And it's like, who's doing better? And they're it's so true. But listen, they forgive us if we overlove them. And when they have to say goodbye, they do. That I agree with you. Like when I got into the whole gardening thing as an adult, I was always nervous to trim anything. I was like, I'm gonna hurt it. And it's got, I gotta let it be. And I remember like somebody in the neighborhood that had a landscaping company came by and said, do you need help cleaning this up? And I was like, no, it's overgrown on purpose, right? I don't want to touch it. It's an English garden. Um, and now I'm like, okay, I am actually, knowing a little bit more, what I'm doing is I'm contributing to the health of the plant by removing certain things or caring for it in a certain way. So, don't be afraid. I guess I have a plant that I should not have. Like I see it, my dad lives in Naples, Florida. I see this plant blooming like as a shrub in Naples, Florida. I have no business growing it in Brewerytown, and I have it growing like all over my window. It hasn't bloomed, but it's growing. And I have been, remiss of like, oh, I shouldn't cut it. I shouldn't cut it. And then I cut it thinking, well, that's the end of its life. And it grew back. So who knows? I mean, they have a mind of their own, just like us. And yeah, I mean, just keep going. If you lose something, I think I killed the hardest plant to kill. It's a ZZ plant, Zeezee. You see them in hotel lobbies, right? They basically have no light. I killed one. So for anybody out there listening that's like, I don't get this. I don't agree with them. No, please. You're gonna experience this.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a great, and then we'll start to wrap up, but what a great parallel though about, you know, just with life, like the caring, over caring, the what, I mean, so much of it, of who we are, probably our personalities goes into the gardening.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is it. Reflect on yourself, look in yourself. Um, Plants are there to not only help us survive, right, and breathe, but they're there to help us reflect on who we are.
And I'm going to have to check that out. A Secret Life of Plants. Is that the name of
Yes,
it?
and
Okay.
apparently it was a movie in the 70s, so like that would make it even more creepier, right? Any movie in the 70s.
Well, I remember seeing an old movie where the plants kind of take over. Isn't there something
Oh,
like,
it's not that.
it's not that one.
I want to tell you, I had to read this book for class. I had to give a book report, and literally, someone handed me tissues because I started weeping as I was reading my book report. I'm a sensitive person anyway, but like, really, I'm how old am I in this class? I'm in my early 50s, and I'm crying over a book report.
Hey, that's all
Who
right.
am
It's a
I?
little thing called being human, right?
Right?
Can't get rid of that. We shouldn't either at all. Well, I want to thank you. This has been a delightful conversation. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you're doing. I hope that it does grow, and I hope others get inspired by listening and do something, if not this, something similar for whatever community they feel passionately about helping.
Thanks
Um,
so much for having me. It was
is
it was so fun to spend the afternoon with you.
Yeah, and I know Collie told me she might be late. She got a lovely haircut. She looks beautiful. For
Oh,
those of you who go to the YouTube, check out her hair. Um, is there anything that you'd like to share in closing? And I will put a link in the show notes. I'll put a link to Heroic Gardens to your website. And for folks, I do have some listeners in the Philadelphia area. Please, check out Heroic Gardens. Go over and visit, volunteer if you can, check it out. But anything else that you would just like to say in closing that you're like, you know what, I didn't get a chance to say this, but I want to share this.
Um, you know what? I guess I meant what I said, like if somebody is listening and they are really thinking about how to start whatever, I want to offer that conversation up, and in any way that I can. I think, you know, I don't necessarily think that I had any mentors or people to work with, and not just in this capacity, but throughout my career and my life. And I don't want it to be that way. I really want to be able to pay it forward. So, um, whatever I can do to help, that's part of the reason I'm on this planet as well.
Great. Well, and as far as reaching out to you, what's the best way?
Oh yeah, there's that, right? You can reach out to me, but I'm not going to tell you how. Bye.
The universe will guide you. Just sit on it for a while.
Right, right. Um, yeah, it's Collie, like the dog, Collie, at Heroic Gardens with an S.org. And I hope to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you. And I will put that in the show notes as well. So folks who you can look in the show notes and click on it and get to Collie. And I think that's a wonderful offer. And I think we spend too much of our lives worrying and in fear. And fear is how to say, it's a horrific thing. It's a terrible thing that keeps us from being, I think, from being honestly. And I know I allow it to happen myself a lot. Fear gets in my way a lot, and don't let it, or try to not let it hold you back, because life is short and you have great gifts to share that we need more of all that good stuff in this world right now, especially. So, well, thank you again, Collie, for joining me. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I think I'm going to be reaching out to you definitely this summer as I do more of my gardening.
Oh yeah, well, in the next month we need to talk, so don't worry.
Okay. All right. You got me
I
pushed
got
upward
you.
on that deadline. Okay. We'll move that up.
Thanks
Well,
again.
thank you. And thank you for my listeners. Some exciting, as always, I say it every week, but it's so true. We have so many wonderful guests coming up. I am like thrilled that as this podcast continues to grow, exciting news starting in March. I'll have my first sponsor, Emily Hickox of Budget Through Life. She's been a guest. She's been a listener first, then a guest. Fantastic. And I have some other folks who are interested in sponsoring the podcast. So I'm feeling very hopeful and blessed. And I'm hearing people are reaching out to me like, here's a woman you should talk to. Here's another woman, because there's so many wonderful women out there. So I look forward to sharing all of their stories. Autism, we're going to be talking about in April. It's Autism Awareness Month. So many different wonderful people and topics that I'm really excited, as always, to share with you out there. And thank you so much, as I always say, for listening. Check out the show notes for the information about Heroic Gardens. And also, as I always say, I put information there for my Buy Me a Coffee if you'd like to help support this podcast. You can also reach out to my Gmail if you are interested in learning more about sponsoring the podcast. And as I say, too, it's not just about money. It's so helpful if you can share the podcast. Tell a friend, tell a foe, tell anyone you know, put it on your social media, write a review if you've enjoyed this. If you haven't enjoyed it, you don't have to tell the world. You can tell me. But if you've enjoyed it, please share it so people know about it. Because us little folks definitely need your help, and we appreciate it. As I always say, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.